Hey everyone, I'm Jatin Parab, Senior Software Engineer at Codecademy, and today I'm going to do a walkthrough for the project Gradebook. We are going to use Python in this project, and at the end of the project, you'll learn how to use nested lists in Python and perform various operations on it. Specifically, we'll cover things like creating nested lists, adding and removing items from it, performing various operations on the sublist, and finally combining two or more lists. So, lots of exciting stuff ahead. Hope you have a fun time.
Hey, so let's get started with this project called Gradebook. In this project, we are going to organize our subjects and grades using Python, and we are going to use nested lists for it. So if you take a look at the code editor, this variable called last semester gradebook, we are going to build this is called a nested list. We are going to build something similar to this, and we are going to perform certain operations on it. And I know this nested list syntax can be a little bit daunting, especially if you are a beginner and you don't have a lot of practice with the syntax. But it's just a matter of practice. And once you keep on doing it, you'll get a hang of it. We'll get through it together. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and just start with the first task and go step by step from there. So the first task tells you to create a list called subjects and fill it with the classes that you are taking. So the way to do it in Python is to use the square bracket syntax, and note that this is just a list, it is not a nested list. So this is going to be a one dimensional list. And to add items inside this list, so this right over here is an empty list, and to add items inside it, you can use you can add the items separated by commas. So let's say if you were to add 1 2 3 to it, you could add it like this, but we have to add subject names to it. So the first subject name is physics, if I can get the spelling right. I'll just copy the names from here for the second item. So the second item is now separated by a comma, and the second item is going to be calculus. The third item is poetry. Fourth one is history. So that completes our list of subjects, and that marks the task number one as complete. And note that this is a single dimensional list because there are no nested lists inside it. We'll get to that part. The second task is very similar to the first one, but now instead of subject names, we are going to fill it with scores. So let's start with an empty list, similar to what we did for subjects, using the square bracket syntax. And then to add items inside this, we have to use the comma to separate the items. So let's add the first item, which is the 98. Then we have 97, we have 85, we have 88. So if you note the difference between these two lists, the first list, the items inside the first list are enclosed within these code marks. That is because the subject names are strings and the scores are numbers. So anything that is enclosed in quote marks is a string in Python. So that marks task number two as done as well. And note that you can organize your code um, differently in Python. So the way I like to do it, because this can become a bit long if you have multiple elements in this list. So the way I like to do it is to keep them on new lines. So after the comma, I just like to add a new line, and this would basically make it a little bit easier to see what is there inside the list. And there's no difference between declaring a list this way or doing it all on one line in Python. So yeah, that was a little bit of a trivia. So let's get started with the third task, move on to the third task. So we are going to create a two-dimensional list. So this is the nested list, and we are going to combine subjects and grades and assign them to a variable called gradebook. So let's first create an empty list, which is going to be gradebook. And again, a very helpful way to organize nested lists is to do it the way that we have organized the subject list. So that would make a little bit easier to see the exact elements inside the list. So once you have declared this empty list, you can just hit return or enter to add a new line, and that would put these brackets on separate lines and give you some space to add things inside it. So to create this nested list. The difference that the first list and this list is going to have is that all the elements in this nested list are going to be is going to be another list. So so the first item is going to be another list, and then inside this list, inside this sub list, basically the first item is going to be the name of the subject, and the second item is going to be the score. So we scored 98 in physics, so the second item would be 98. And the way to add another item in this list will be very similar to the one dimensional list example here. You just have to add another comma, and on another line you can add the next item. So the next item is again going to be very similar to the first item, and we change the subject names to calculus, and the score is going to be 97. So similarly, I'll just complete the list, and to make a little bit make life a little bit easier, to since this next item that we are going to add is going to be very similar to this item, so you could copy the entire line without selecting any part, by just hitting command C or control C on this particular line without selecting anything, and just hit command V or control V to duplicate the entire line. Now we just have to change the subject name here and change the marks. So the score that we have is 85. Now again, using the same way, I just duplicate this line and put in history and the score of 88. So that basically completes our grade book. Now, syntactically, both of these grade books, the last semester grade book variable and this grade book, are exactly the same. There's no difference in doing it all on one single line and doing it them in multiple lines. Again, if you take a look at this is a little bit easier to look at. So that marks task number 3 as done. So let's print out this grade book and see what this prints out. So yeah, as you can see, we have the gradebook with all of the elements inside it. So yeah, it looks as we expected it to be, and that marks task number 4 as done as well. So the structure of this gradebook is similar to the last semester gradebook, and we have the scores of last semester, like politics with a score of 80, so on and so forth. Okay, so let's move on to task number 5. Now, things are getting interesting here because we are going to perform operations on this nested list or our gradebook that we have defined. So, yeah, we have some good news. We have the score of computer science class, and obviously, since you use Codecademy, you have scored a perfect 100. So now we want to add this score to this list, and to add an item to the list, the way to do it is to use this append method. So the way you call it is by writing down the variable name, or the name of the list which you want to add the item to, and to use the dot append syntax or the dot append method, and pass in whatever value you want to add to this list. So if I were to just pass in, let's say, a random value here called 1, that would have the effect of doing something like this. So that would add 1. But what we want to do is to add another list inside this parent list of gradebook. So I would add another list here, and which is going to be very similar to the score that we have here. And instead of the subject name being history, we have computer science with a score of 100. That would have the effect of doing it manually, like so. So we would expect this computer science grade to also show up here after history. So let's see, print out this gradebook and see if it worked correctly. So yeah, we have the computer science score in this gradebook. So that marks task number 5 as done. So for task number 6, the score of visual arts also came in, and we are also pretty good at visual arts because we scored 93. So we are also going to add that to our gradebook. And now this is going to be very similar to what we did for computer science. So again, you could use the same trick of just copying the entire line and pasting it down below and just changing the subject name here to visual arts and the score to 93. So just to be very clear, let's print out the grade books one after the other. And another trick that I typically like to use is to pass in another parameter to this print method called end, and that would and then you can do a couple of slash ns backslash ns uh, inside as a parameter end to it that would basically print a blank line below whatever we printed out here, so it makes things a little bit easier to see. So let's try running this. Okay, so we have the first gradebook after adding computer science, and then we have the visual arts score in as well. So just to be very sure, again, let's print out the initial gradebook, which is without the computer science score. Then we add the computer science score, and then we add the visual arts score. So as you can see, the operations happening in code in the output here. So we have the computer science score first, and then we added the visual arts score as well. So that marks task number 6 as done too. Now let's move on. We have another good news that our instructor is actually did make a grading mistake, and they are rewarding 5 extra points to us for the visual arts class. So this task tells us to access the index of the grade for your visual arts class and modify the score to be 5 points greater. Now, the way you access items from a list or a nested list is exactly the same. You can use the syntax of square brackets and passing in the index of whatever element that you want to access. Now, the elements in the list start from an index of 0. So in the subjects list, we would give this physics would be at index number 0. I'll just add index here so to make sure that these are indexes and not numbers. And this would be the first index. Physics would be at the 0th index. Calculus would be one index. So what would visual arts be in this list gradebook? What index would it be at? So let's just go step by step. This is 0th index. This would be 1. This would be 2. This would be 3. And these operations below that we are doing happen sequentially, as you can see here. So we first add computer science. This gets added at index number 4, and visual arts get added at index number 5. So if we were to do gradebook 5, this should give us visual arts. So just printing it out and see if our calculations are correct here. Yeah, we have visual arts being printed here. So similarly, you can access any item from our gradebook here. So if I were to do 2, if I were to access the index of 2, that would give me poetry. Yeah, we have poetry. So, but let's just access visual arts because we want to do further operations on it. So let me just quickly run this, and we have access to visual arts. And now we want to access the grade as well because we want to perform operations on the score instead of this entire list. So to access elements inside nested list, you have to add another bracket here, another pair of square brackets here, and then now we are inside this visual arts list. So again, in this list, visual arts would be at, which is the subject name, would be at index number 0, and the score would be at, which is 93, which will be at index number 1. So let's just try it out and see if we are getting the visual arts subject name correctly. Yeah, we are getting that. And just to be a little bit tidy, I'll just add the new lines here. Okay, so we got visual arts, but we want to increase the score to be 5 points higher. So let's access score. So that is 93, and now we can perform operations on this 93 is what we have access to. So to add 5 points to this 93, we can use the plus equals operator or the increment operator to increment the whatever value this gradebook 5 of 1 indexing has, which is, as we saw, 93. And now we add 5 to it. So this should take the score to 98. Let's see if this operation did what we expected it to do, and just print it out after adding 5 points, 5 extra points. So yeah, let's see. So yeah, we have the initial list of subjects here. Then we added computer science to it. Then we added visual arts to it, and then we added extra 5 points. So here, as you can see, the visual arts has a score of 93, and we added 5 points to it, so that makes it 98. So our this extra operation that we did worked perfectly fine. So let's mark this task as done as well. Now we have an interesting decision here, because we decided to switch the numerical grade to a pass or fail option for the poetry class. So we don't have a numeric score for the poetry class. So essentially what we want to store is something like this: a pass or a fail. And notice that this pass or fail are again strings, because these are not numbers. So this they would be enclosed in quote marks. But we don't want to do it right here in the list when we are declaring it. We want to do it programmatically. So to do that, firstly, we would do this in two steps. Firstly, we will remove the 85 score from here, so we just have poetry in there. And then using the remove method, and then we are using the append method that we already used here to append the score, to append a pass or fail string to this sublist. So let's go step by step. And similarly, the similar to the way we accessed visual art score, we will first try to access poetry score. So let's print out the gradebook and at index of 2, because poetry is at the index of 2. And let's see what we get. So we got poetry, we got the sublist of poetry. And now, as I mentioned, the first step that we are going to do is to remove this score of 85, because we want to store pass or fail instead. So the way to do it is, now we are performing the remove operation on this sublist and not the gradebook parent list. So this would not be something like gradebook dot remove. It would actually be gradebook, the index, which will give us the sublist, and then remove on it. So to remove the score of 85, we would pass the item that we want to remove from this list. So this, we want to remove 85 from the grade book of 2, which is this poetry sublist. And let's see what this does. So we would expect poetry to just contain the subject name and the score to be gone. Okay, so yeah, this worked correctly, and we just have the poetry subject name here, and we don't have any score for it. So that marks task number 8 as done. And finally, now we can use the append method, which we have already used earlier, to append a pass string to the list instead of the score. So I'll just keep this print statement here to be to see how the operations are happening in real time. And then I would use the append method to add the value. And notice that here we wanted to append a list to the parent list, which is why we have passed a list inside append. Now in this case we just want to append a string, so that would be a single element. It would not be something like this. This would be wrong because we would be appending a list inside this list. We just want to append the pass string. So let's see what this does. Okay, so we have all of the operations happening here one by one. So let's focus on the second last and the last step. The second last step is when we removed the score of 85 from the gradebook, and now we just have the subject name here. And notice that this subject name is still in a list, it is not a single element. So we can still add items to this list. And the item that we added here was pass, which is the string here. So we replace the score with the string pass. So that marks task number 9 as done as well. And now we have the final step, which is to combine the last semester gradebook and this semester gradebook to finally see our full gradebook in all of its action. So the way to combine two lists in Python is to use the plus operator. Uh, so you can do something like the variable name that you want to add, uh, and then you can add this gradebook. So these are the two items that we want to add together or combine them together, and this would actually give a new list which we can store it in a variable. So let's name this variable as full gradebook. So full gradebook is going to be a combination of the last semester gradebook and this semester gradebook with all of the operations performed. So we declared the operation of gradebook here, then we added 5 points to it. We added 5 points to the visual arts score, and then we added the pass result here, and then we finally combine the full gradebook. So let's see our entire gradebook in action here, and instead of gradebook now I will print the full gradebook. Okay, so at the end we have the combined gradebook here, which has all of the subjects and the scores from our last semester gradebook, which we already had declared, and all of the operations performed on the this semester's gradebook, and then finally we combine both of the gradebooks. So the final result would have all of the operations that we performed on this semester's gradebook combined with the last semester gradebook. So that marks the last task as done as well. So yeah, that completes this project, and hopefully you have a good understanding of nested lists now, and hope you had fun.
So, hey, thanks for following along. If you'd like to try out more projects like this one, or maybe take a look at the various courses and career paths that we have on Codecademy, check out the link in the description below. And for more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any updates. Bye bye, see you around.